You're looking so scruffy and burly, honey. I like it.
Excellent. All right. Gather round the digital campfire here.
We need a campfire too. It's been snowing today.
We need
Must be springtime.
we need a line. I like that. Let's gather around. Everybody, come in. Gather around the digital campfire here. We are Kate and Tanner Wendell. And tonight we are discussing the question, whom do I need to be in order to be happy? This is chapter 10, or
No,
question
11.
number 10. Oh, it's 11?
It's 11.
Okay, it's number 11 in the 29 questions for an ordinary life.
Yeah.
The title, I don't know.
Well,
all right, so
But it's the book.
it is the book, and it's the book that we chose to read, and we were going to use the official, it's the question, the official title of this chapter is Donald Trump, Mother Teresa, and Gumby. And please tell us why that is, Kate.
So this section, we've been talking through the first 10 chapters and moved into the second section of this book, where it's dealing more with personal growth questions, not so much like life type questions. And this is a great place to start, because now this was written before Donald Trump was our president. This was while he still had his TV show, The Apprentice, and gives...
You're fired.
You're fired.
I don't even have a Donald Trump impression.
No.
Other than that.
Yeah. And he gives the examples of Donald Trump, Mother Teresa, and Gumby in their individuality, and how we look at people and think about when you were a child. You would say like, oh, like I want to be like you when I grow up, right? And we're learned at a very early age that like we should be like someone else, when in actuality we should be our own person. So this is so powerful for parents who have children, where they're trying to encourage them to be who they are, but yet they're still saying like, oh, but you got to do it this way and you got to do it that way. And we want to encourage that authenticity. So Donald Trump has, you look at him and every right, again, just off of the TV show and his success, like he's a successful businessman. He has the successful TV show. Maybe we could work on his hair, but otherwise, right? Like, people would look at him and say, okay, there's success. And then you look at Mother Teresa, and she had a very different kind of success. She gave up everything and worked with the poorest of the poor and the sick, like the sick of the sick, right? And she had a very amazing life and a successful life, but it looked very different from Donald Trump, right? And not probably a life that most people would want to go after. And then you have Gumby, and then Gumby is the flexible character that you can make it into whatever you want, and kids love it, and it's so cool. And I mean, I didn't play with Gumby when I was little, but a lot of kids do, right? And it was a cartoon and all that like, oh, it's just this flexible thing that you can put into anything you want. And how, we look into those kinds of examples of like, well, here's the success, here's what it's supposed to look like, and how are we going to just fit into that mold of what we should look like according to someone else, rather than digging into ourselves and finding our true identity and living authentically.
Now, what it doesn't do is tell you how to do that, right? It sort of just leaves you with this idea that, hey, you should be yourself. And I think that's, that's cute, and it's very in vogue. And it's something that I think is important, right? But what, for me, the issue with that is I don't feel like I found myself and really, uncovered what that even means until I followed a journey of not being myself. And so I do think that I think it's a process. I think it is a journey. The example he gives, which is so typical, which is that, he's like, I laugh to look back at my high school pictures, and I looked like everybody else. I didn't know who I was, and it's probably true for many of us. I grew up in a super small town, graduating class of 35 people, so I don't know. We probably all pretty much look the same.
Oh my gosh, my 8th grade graduating class was 12 students. No joke.
That's
6
crazy.
boys, 6 girls. 8th grade. Well, that was 8th grade. But yeah.
So, neither one of us had I don't know, your high school was probably bigger, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But either way, those aren't numbers that it's hard to form a clique in 12 or even 35. I mean, we did have the kids that were, more athletic, and then the party kids and sort of the flunkies and, that sort of stuff. So even out of 35, you can sort of divide.
I was gonna say, I think ours was like 40 something, like 48 or whatever. And yeah, I mean, we definitely had our share of cliques.
It's amazing, right? Just in 35 kids in a small town, Nebraska, how we found a way to divide ourselves probably 6 or 8 different ways. If I look at, the nerds, the popular kids, the athletes, the, dropouts, the party kids, like pretty quickly, it's like we all fit into one or two of those categories, and you sort of get divided. Anyway, the point is that, I don't even know, this is like a weird thing, because it's like, oh, well, society creates this, and this is how it forms. And so I always want to go like, well, where is that force? Where is that societal force that has this power over us? And I think that's a much larger question. I think that it's marketing, it's companies, it's people that have a purpose and have more influence. And we were on an interview earlier today with a couple of our mentors, and they were talking about how, the husband, Frank, wanted to start a business opportunity, and his wife, Cindy, wasn't really into it. And he was the influencer. And she said, I'm glad that he didn't allow me to influence him. And so I think wherever you are, you're either influencing or you're being influenced. And so I think it's it's the marketing dollars, it's the forces and the companies and the organizations and that have much greater agendas. Sure, family, right? Whatever. But people that have a greater agenda than you, who ultimately sort of create these boxes that we end up fitting in. And for me, I was extremely lost looking back on it, my teens, my 20s. I didn't know who I was. I think I just wanted to be accepted. And so I thought like, oh, I need to fit in.
Which I think is very common for high school. Right.
Yeah, sure. We just feel like, you want to be accepted in, especially if you don't feel like you belong in your family. So you're like, well, I want to be accepted in my, my peer groups and my friend circles. And then, a lot of people, because of that, end up going to the same colleges that they went to, that their high school friends are going to. Like, it becomes a massive trap where you're following other people for the wrong reasons. But again, for me, I don't know any other way other than having to walk that out and get to a point where I felt so lost that I realized the only way forward was just to do what felt good and what felt right to me, and to just follow that call and to follow that and let that become my journey until I really felt like, okay, I'm stepping into who I am and who I want to become, and I'm getting clarity on that. And even through that process, I fell into, certain cliquey groups and certain things that it's like, oh, I'm the fitness guy with these fitness groups. And then I'm like, nah, not really. And out of certain groups that I found myself in, I maybe have a couple of friends that I keep in touch with out of those groups that I made as an adult. But the whole point of this, at least for me, I think you just have to walk it out. And if you can find that early on in life, that's a beautiful thing. I think the flip side of that, and the thing to caution or to be afraid of, is never figuring that out, and going through life, always being influenced, always trying to be a chameleon, always just wanting to fit in, always just wanting to be accepted, without truly feeling like you start to uncover the gift that you've been given of your life.
Yeah. And just kind of referencing our chat with Frank and Cindy earlier today, and how she was not for this business opportunity. And so she said that she was happy that, for her, she wasn't the influencer. And I think if you look at, I agree as well with Tanner, where you sort of have to figure out like what you want to do and where you want to go by sometimes doing the things that you don't want to do, right? You got to do that first and realize, yeah, that's not for me. And that's actually something that was sort of a pattern that I had in my young adult life, where I was, from high school to college, into an early career, like just doing things and realizing, yeah, that's not the road that I want to go down. And so, okay, I'm going to pick back up and figure something else out. And I think ultimately on that journey, a lot of people do not get in tune with their gut and just that intuition of like, okay, this is the right thing, or this is the right way to go for me, for you as a person. But I think it's also important to recognize that there are people who are going to lead you. We have influencers in the world, and it's okay to be influenced as long as they're influencing you to be great, right? So just pay attention to, who you're surrounding yourself with and who you're listening to. Are they helping you to be better and grow every day? Because if they are, then that's probably someone that it's okay to be influenced by that. It's not a bad thing to be influenced by someone. It's just, who are you being influenced by, right? So, and then from there, your actions could then in turn influence someone else in a great positive manner as well. So, we've been certainly influenced by many people because they've become our mentors, some that we've gotten to meet in person and work with in person to some degree, and some they're our mentors from afar, and we buy their programs and we listen to them, and they feed into us. But that's a good influence. So that's okay, because that will help you discover, the path you want to go down, so that you can live a true self, right? And an authentic self. They ask, they talk about how many people believe that they're going to be happy when they have a certain amount of money, a perfect mate. Heck, I mean, I lived that for years, where I'm like, oh, my happiness is based on whether or not I find my Mr. Right, and get married. The house, the job that you have, the car that you have. Jewelry is a big one, I think, especially, oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many women I met in New York where it was like all about like the clothes and the jewelry. Like you had to have certain things, and you had this status, right? That was the status in life. And think about it with celebrities too, right? There's this status, there's this image, they have all these things. And then you have like someone like Robin Williams, and he blows his brains out, right? Like, so think about like, do these things, it's not a bad thing to have those. And that's what he kind of addresses here. It's not a bad thing to have those things. But why do you want them? And where is it going to internally give you happiness? Because at the end of the day, if we want to sum up our life, like we want to be loved, we want to be accepted, we want to be happy. Like everything comes under that stuff, right? So nothing wrong with it. And the question that he gives us is, do any of these things lead to being authentic and showing up as our true selves? Or are they simply distractions to doing our true work of authenticity? And that just kind of hit home for me, because I'm like, God, man, I think of all the things that I was like, oh, I've got to have this, and I have to look like that, and I've got to be this way. And so much, like literally up until just maybe even 5 years ago, where like this was how I needed to live. and it wasn't bringing me anything but just more agony. And I wasn't being my true self, which in turn, when you can be your true self, you'll find joy in that.
Yeah, and we we do talk about that. I mean, I remember when we first got together, and you're like, "Well, I want this, or I want to live here," or even we had to get a new car at the end of last year with the addition of a fifth family member, and it's like, well, why do we want that? Why this? Why does it have to be that? And I can truly say, as being someone who I'll just say, quite frankly, grew up in a culture where a vehicle was a status.
Mm-hmm.
And and I'm extremely grateful that I got a nice vehicle when I was in high school, and I took great care of it, and I tricked it out, and I put 20-inch rims on it, and like carbon fiber headlights, and that was my thing. And part of it was that I actually enjoyed tinkering with things. But if I look at it, like, I spent 2000, I had like a little over $2,000 in my savings account when I was in college, and I spent all of that on 20-inch rims for my truck. And because I wanted them. I wanted them because, like, rims were cool, right, in the early 2000s. And I sold that. I traded that vehicle in for like $5,000 a couple years later, and they actually asked me to take those rims off, and if I had the original wheels, because it was better, it was a greater value for them to be able to sell the vehicle as stock, as actually the minimal custom. And I was just like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, you're asking, I spent all my money on savings on these freaking rims, which I thought were so cool, and again was going to give me some status or do something for me, which it didn't. And now my entire vehicle is worth not much more than I spent on these rims, twice as much as I spent on the freaking rims. And you're asking me to take them off and bring the old stock ones and put those stock ones back on, which, by the way, cost me money to get that done, and like I had to pay storage to, like, the whole freaking thing, right? As I look back, and that just popped into my mind. But I think so. So the point there, though, is that we had that conversation. Hey, what type of vehicle do we want? Why do we want it? How many years used does it have to be? And I think what it came down for is, like, we want a nice vehicle because we don't want something that we're gonna, like, I don't work on cars, and I've had cars that I had to go to the shop more often than just for an oil change, and that sucks. It costs money, it takes time. You're not sure if you if you really need to spend that money on the repairs, and then you got to take time to go to other repair shops, and then you're like, well, what if I get this done? What if I don't get this done? What if it breaks down? Like, I've been in that situation where I spent a lot of mental anguish and time and money on driving a vehicle that had problems. And so we're like, well, we don't want to do that. Anyway, the long story short here is that we've had those conversations, and now we're like, you know what? There's certain things, like, I want a Tesla. Why? Because I like the theory and the idea of moving towards cleaner energy. Quite frankly, like, I think they're cool. I think there's a Tesla culture that I'm interested in. I'm not an electric vehicle sort of psycho, like, I don't know, psycho is not the right word, but fanatic, that's the right word. Like a lot of people online are, but there's something about it. It's techie, it's cool, it's whatever. And so I'm like, I like that. But they cost,
and I have like zero desire to have a Tesla.
Totally.
I'm like, I'll find a different car. He's like, what's your dream car? I'm like, I don't know. I need to drive some and figure it out.
Yeah, like, so the point is, like, cool, I'd like to get that someday, and quite frankly, by the time that is a financial something we're able to do financially, like, it'll probably change by then. Clothes, I mean, look at us, you see us on here, like, we're not really concerned about
Well, and
that type of stuff. I will say I'm wearing my ClickFunnels sweatshirt though. There is something about being, community. ClickFunnels is a very cult like community.
Good cult.
Yeah, good cult, sure. And sure. There are things like that it is nice to be a part of, but for the right reasons, because people are accepting of people that want more, and they're empowering, and it's a culture of learning and helping each other. Like, there are good cults and cliques out there, but I think to what you said earlier, Kate, which is like, it's okay to be influenced, it's okay to be part of the cult, it's okay to be part of the clique, as long as it's something that is getting you to go in the direction that you want to go, and not just because whatever, right? You don't want to lose friends, you don't want to feel left out, you don't want to, like, I my circle of friends is very small, and I'm okay with that now, because I have the people that I have in my life for what I believe are the right reasons to me.
Yeah, well, my circle of friends have always been small. I've never had a very large kind of group of people in through high school to even now. But the thing that in talking about clothes and stuff, I've just to kind of give you an idea of like where is it coming from. So when I was living in New York has very much of a New York City, very much a status of how you look, right? How you look, how you present yourself. What do you do? Where do you live in the city as well? And so there is this status. And I just remember, like, I literally put myself further in debt just to buy clothes that would fit into that appearance that I wanted to be in. Where now I will buy clothes because I happen to like that designer, because I feel like that designer makes clothes well, and it's worth investing a little bit more to have something that's going to last me for a while. I'd rather buy something that I'm like, but when I put it on, it feels good. It fits right. Like, I like how I look. I think it's flattering, like you want to feel good in your clothes. You don't want to feel, 10 o'clock at night, we're in our hoodies, but when we get, when we're dressing up, so
which isn't that often
these days, correct. But
or really for the last 2 years, because
I've been pregnant.
From home, and you've been pregnant.
I've been pregnant or postpartum. I'm like, half my wardrobe I can't even fit into for like 2 years, and working on it. Anyway, point is, like, why is it that you want that jacket or those pair of jeans or whatever? Is it because like this is this is what fits and it feels good, and like I like this designer? Or is it because I have to have it because everyone else has it? Or this is an expensive pair of jeans, and I want people to know that I got some money and I can pay for an expensive pair of jeans. So understand where, like, and that's where I think the influence, and that's where he's talking about being authentically you, right? And just remembering that you don't, and gosh, man, like, authenticity is so powerful. It even, like, which I thought was really great, as he says to be, he's quoting Ralph Waldo Emerson, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. Think about all the things that we say are like the great accomplishment of like, oh, you got to get this and you got to get that and you have to do that, and keeping up with the Joneses, right? And you got to have that promotion, and you got to make this amount of money, and you got to live here and not there. And like, but to be yourself in the world, like truly yourself, and you have inner peace about that, that's the greatest accomplishment. And I was like, damn, like, we don't talk about that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But all the other stuff.
Yeah. So I think to wrap this up, and we've beat the like the money and the cars and the clothes and all of that. I think for me, what bubbles to the top of my brain is where you spend your time and your money are the two most telling things. And I've heard multiple mentors say, show me your calendar and show me your bank account, and that tells me everything I need to know about your life. And
where your priorities are.
Where your priorities are. And I think that speaks to this question about, where are you spending your time and where are you spending your money? Because those two things are in direct correlation to your happiness. How you make your money. What do you do for work? And then what do you do with that money? And what are you doing in your free time? And are you working to just live for Friday and make enough money to go cover your bar tab and, get blacked out on the weekend, and like that to like that success. I mean, that used to be success for me. Like how wasted and crazy was my weekend. And it's like how to look back on like how, just, I don't know, not in alignment with my thinking that is now. I'm not going to judge myself for where I was, but it's like, really, like I aspired to basically go live a weekend that I then didn't remember come Monday morning, and then, make enough money to do it all over again the next week. It's like, what? But that's that again, that was part of finding myself. And it takes courage to step out of whatever situation you may be in once you realize that you're not happy. I've got to say, that is one of the worst things is we're finding and having the realization that, hey, I'm not happy. I don't enjoy this situation and I'm not doing anything about it. Right. It's one thing to be in a situation that's not beneficial to you and not have the awareness of it, which is where I was for the majority of my 20s. It's another thing when you get the awareness and then don't do anything about it. And then you feel trapped and then it starts to eat away at you. And life's too short, man. I think if there's anything that can come out of, world meltdown 2020 is that like death is imminent. You could die, right? There are a lot of people dying. And so if you're worried about that, it's like you could die. You probably won't because less than 1% of the world's population is going to be affected and actually die. But you could. And so if you're so worried about I could die and what could happen and all of this stuff, well, let me just say this, that if you are fortunate enough to live, then you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your family, you owe it to the world. Most importantly, you owe it to yourself to go figure out what makes you happy and what sets you on fire, because that's what the world needs. Mm-hmm. The world doesn't need more replicas and duplicates and copies of other people pretending that they're happy.
Let's end here with Mother Teresa. She said it powerfully. Quote, "I am a little pencil in the hand of a writing God who is sending a love letter to the world." End of quote. So get the lead out and start the writing your letter to the world. The gift in answering this question for yourself is inner and outer peace. Our greatest challenge in life is to show up authentically, powerfully, and with joy. Happiness is an inside job that can be accomplished only by being true to yourself.
Thanks to Mark. Thanks to Carol. And anyone else that is tuning in, drop us a thumb. Sarah, thank you as well. Let us know that you're here or that you catch us on the replay, and we will be back tomorrow with, what is it? Day 12? Chapter 12?
Chapter 12.
All right. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.